just all of a sudden started looking beyond like what I was currently doing, and all of a sudden the world just seemed like anything was possible. Home report was 160 and we got it for 125. It was over 100 grand refurb. We sold it for 320. That to me is invaluable. That is everything I could have wished for, and me that has just been worth everything.
Hello, it's Paul McFadden and welcome to the Property Success Podcast. I have one main goal for this, and that is to bring in guests that are going to inspire you. And today's guest is absolutely going to do that. It's amazing to hear her whole journey, her background, how she got involved in property, and what she's achieved in such a short period of time. Jenna, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, thank
Welcome
you so much
to the
for
podcast.
having me.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Now, it's so funny because we're just having a little chat prior to this, and like most people who come on the podcast, it's like a little bit of nerves beforehand.
Yes, definitely.
But we just had a little chat and just hearing about
Yeah.
your background and everything that you've done over the last couple of years. Like, I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here. And what I love about being here is it's forced me to look back over my journey so far, which is lovely to see on paper, like how far you've came, because I think sometimes you don't always acknowledge that until you're kind of forced to in this kind of situation. So thank you for having me so that I could get the chance to do that as well.
Good stuff. So, what is your background? Has it always been property, or what was your background before that?
So before I did property, I was a chartered accountant. So I did the whole 4 years at university, came out of there, started off my career in South Africa. So I started as an auditor in South Africa for a year and a half, primarily auditing like the car industry and some work in the renewables side of things. And then came back from there and worked in practice for a bit in Edinburgh before going into more sort of industry side of things and PFI. So that's what I was doing before I went into property, was as a chartered accountant.
And what was the attraction for you for property?
I think for me it was having my third child. So there was something about, I think a lot of parents can relate to this, but when you have your children, you sort of start to look beyond yourself for the first time, because you're looking, towards your children instead of just looking at yourself and what you're doing at that time. And I think by having my third child, they were 3 under 3 at the time, I just all of a sudden started looking beyond like what I was currently doing, and all of a sudden the world just seemed like anything was possible. And with their ages being 3 under 3, we used to drive about a lot in the van for sleeps, and I started noticing like for sale signs or old buildings that were just lying there, and I just noticed that this is of an interest to me, and this is something that I actually noticed that whilst I was tied up in the kids, it was really catching my attention. And so through speaking about that with my husband, of course, then things start popping up on your phone, and that's when your face popped up for Jumpstart. And I think by that time, I don't know what specifically happened, but all of a sudden this property was just, this was for me, and this is the route I was going to go. And so I booked on to Jumpstart and came along. So
That's a great strategy. So when you're trying to get your kids to sleep, drive around in the car and look at property deals.
I think that's it, because you have to make it work for your situation, don't you? And that just worked for me. I mean, I used to spend 2 hours every day in the car making them sleep because of their ages. At that time, as I say, it was 3 under 3, so you couldn't be putting them all down in their different beds. It was just like everyone in the car, we had to get a van. So everyone in the van, and off we went. And that was just a way of entertaining myself in those times, I would say. Like,
Do you know what I find that's remarkable in what you're saying there? Because I've got 3 as well that are relatively young, not as young.
yeah, but they would have all been quite close when they were younger, wouldn't
Absolutely.
they? Yeah.
And all girls, you've got all boys.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's one of those ones where you've got your career. Mm-hmm. Now you're going through this shift of thinking about property and then taking that step to come along to a property jumpstart.
Yeah.
and juggling kids and everything else as well. What was that like for you? Because you then took the step and came along to join our Protege program. Is that right?
Yes, yes. I think by the time I was coming to Jumpstart, I had probably already decided I wanted to do more.
Yeah.
So by coming to Jumpstart, it was probably just me going, go along there, Jenna, and you're going to do the protege anyway. But, it was just good to get a feeler for what it might look like and things like that. Sorry, I've actually forgot what the
No, no,
question
it's all
was that you'd
good. It's
asked.
just
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's this whole idea that
Yes.
with so much going on with a family, young family,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then throwing yourself into learning more about property, coming along to Protege and things.
Yeah, well, that was it. And I remember actually when I came to Jumpstart, I was still breastfeeding. So I was actually in one of your boardrooms, like expressing through the breaks and things like that. I don't know. I think by that point, I just had such a push that this was right for me that I just knew that I just had to make this happen at that point.
Yeah.
And I knew more so in the career that I was in, I have big respect for accountants and the profession, but for me to get to where I would need to be to where, to live the lifestyle I wanted to live, I would have had to trade time with the children. There's just no doubt about that. There's flexible working and there's things that make it a little bit easier. But to do really well as an accountant, you must give up your whole time basically. That's just the way it is. Whereas for me, property, it was, yes, it's going to be really hard. I'm going to have to work very hard because it was and it is, but it's all around about my terms and that works with the children. And so that's what I'd hoped it would be and that's what it's became and that's what's just so lovely about that. So in terms of, I think, the juggle with the children at the time, it was basically just you need to make this happen. And so fitting in what I was doing around about the children, bringing them along to solicitors' appointments, to viewings, all these things, you just have to kind of make it work with your lifestyle. And I think that's what we had to do to adapt. And learning, as you say, doing the learning. And I was here, I was, like I say, I was expressing and things like that. But I think when you decide you want something, you just kind of have to go for it.
Yeah.
And then you guys obviously facilitated that and made it, I was able to use a boardroom and things like that. So it was Cassie who helped me with that. She's a mum herself as well. So so that made it possible in that term, like that sense as well. So yeah.
And how was Protege for you, coming along, spending the days?
Oh, I just loved it. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. I just thought, wow, this is so good. This is everything I wanted it to be. I think I maybe was a little bit lucky. I have that background as an accountant. So everything I was learning just clicked in my head. It just all seemed to make sense. It had the right mix for me of, the areas we covered, the depth we went into, the way it was delivered, the inspiration that came along with it. It just, to me, that week just felt right. It just felt like this is where I'm meant to be. And I'm so excited for what's going to come of it, basically.
So leaving Protege, all excited, motivated, fired up,
Yeah.
got big goals with the family and everything else.
Yeah.
Then tell me what led to your first deal. So everyone likes to know about the first one.
Yeah, so I'd already had one on my radar before I'd came to Protege, but I'd never done anything about it because I think at that point I decided, right, if you're going to do property, I want to learn how to do it right. And I suppose that's maybe the accountant in me that's quite, mathematical and wants to make sure your ducks are in a row in a sense. But so I'd had this property was on my radar, and then did Protege, learned how to do the due diligence. Essentially, that was the most important part. That's the part that gave me the confidence to go for it. But I mean, it was a auction house purchase. It the process of it was the land register was going online or something, so there was a bit of a unknown about that. So we got that expedited, and at that point, once that came through, I'd already had the chance to view the property, had the pack for the solicitor to go through. I knew my numbers, and so at that point we put the offer in, and it got rejected. So I basically just drove to the woman's door and put a letter through her door. And I said, I'm the one who's put in the offer. I'd love to hear from you. A couple of days went by and then I didn't hear from her. And then eventually I got the message to say, yes, like happy to speak to you. So I remember I was with my son in a cafe and I'd taken him out to the car park and I was like, literally had my son in my arms and I was on the phone to this woman. And this is where Sean's teachings of the way this conversation was going to go, I could not believe it because it was going exactly as he'd said. She was pouring her heart, maybe not pouring her heart out, but really telling me a lot about, you know, her personal circumstances. And I think what I came to realise is she wasn't accepting my offer because of a lot of personal trauma rather than, you know, she was rejecting a lot of offers, but actually by speaking through this personal trauma with her, as Sean had said, you know, getting to the pain point, she then agreed to accept the offer. So I went back to auction house, put in the offer, and then she accepted it. And then that was me with my first deal.
So before we get into the numbers on the first deal and the strategy that you used, do you know what I love about what you shared there? The first thing is that, and it's what we teach at Protege, isn't it? It's like there's many different marketing strategies.
Yeah.
You should build relationships with agents. You should put in offers, rejection in terms of not getting an offer accepted is part and parcel of the game. But you did that one extra thing that's made all the difference for you,
Yeah.
which is the whole direct to vendor or direct to seller letters. And it's as simple as just popping it through the door.
That was it, yeah.
Because sometimes, as you've just said there, when you've got a bridge between you, the estate agent, you know, there's communications getting missed. You can't have that deep conversation.
Yes.
And then you did that, and that opened up a whole conversation that you would never have had if it was through the agent. And then they get to connect with you.
Yes.
You get to connect with them.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that we teach when it comes to making offers, negotiation, dealing with a motivated seller. She was, is that it's not all about the numbers. The numbers need to work, or else you're not going to buy the property, of course. And a trade-off for a quick sale is normally at discount, or, you know, there's got to be a bit of come and go. But when you find it someone's personal situation and you make it about how can I solve that person's problem, and that's clearly what you did in order for them to then accept your offer. It's just incredible. It's the best approach.
Yeah. In particular, her refurb costs were about a quarter of what they ended up being. So it was actually just letting her know, look, your refurb costs here are far too low. No one's going to buy it for what you want because you're completely underestimating what needs spent on it.
Yeah.
So that was really, it was that, having that conversation as well as just having the personal, you know, discussion with her. I think those things coupled together is what made her finally agree. So
that's great. I'm glad.
Yeah.
And then that one there, was that a property that you held? Did you flip?
we flipped it.
You flipped that one?
Yeah, we flipped it. So I think it was, home report was 160 and we got it for 125.
So great deal straight away.
It was a great deal straight away. It was over $100,000 refurb, and then end value was 310 on home report, but we sold it for 320.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a big refurb outgoing, but it was also fully funded by finance.
Okay.
So it was, because I got such a good deal and I had such good potential, I got the full purchase and development funded.
Was it Express that organised the funding?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so you used Express Mortgages.
Yeah.
So in case someone's watching going, how on earth do you mean fully funded, right?
Yeah.
So let me just quickly unpack that, because
Yeah.
that's great. So from this point of view, because the property had a home report value up here,
Yes.
so it was a lot higher. What was it again?
It was 160.
160,
Yeah.
and you were able to buy it at 125.
Yes.
So straight away you can leverage that discount.
Yeah.
And then the best part is because you know that when you spent the money in terms of the £100,000 renovation,
Yeah.
it's going to substantially add more value over a 300.
Yes.
And that's where the calculations that a great broker like Express Mortgages can look at and then help you with the funding side of things.
Exactly. So, I mean, it was completely fully funded, apart from that first little gap, you know, when it's auction house, you have to pay, obviously,
Small
the
deposit,
deposit.
yeah.
So that was funded. But then once we got the finance in, that was essentially cancelled out. So the entire project was essentially done.
So after all fees, profit would have been around about?
profit was, because it was fully funded, it was quite expensive finance and stuff. It was around about 40,000.
Which is still amazing.
Yeah.
And this is where we put things into perspective, because you've put very little money in other than the initial deposit to secure it.
Yeah.
And when people focus on cash return, sure, bridging finance can be more expensive.
Yes.
But it's the only option that you can have, because you can't get a traditional buy-to-let mortgage on a property that needs a lot of renovation work done.
Yeah.
So you're either tying up lots of cash. In your case, it'd be, 125 to buy plus fees and 100 for renovation. That's more inefficient of utilising cash.
Yes.
So when you just said they're only about 40,000, only, that's incredible,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I know it is. It is absolutely incredible. I think it's when you're talking about these big numbers, but I think it's that's a wake up call, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
when you hear those big numbers, you think, oh, you must have made like more than that even. But actually, but yeah, no, of course it's brilliant. Of course, we're absolutely delighted, and that escalated me being able to go full time in property to then move forward in the way that we have. So yeah.
So do you think it's because your background as an accountant, looking at numbers, that when you look at a flip, and I know you've done more, which we can get into, but a flip that makes you over £40,000, that's more than the average UK salary. And if you actually take London out of the UK salary in terms of the medium number, it drops down to about 36 and a half. And if you look at Scotland, it drops down even further as well. So one flip. And I'm sure you leverage your power team and everything else as well.
Yeah.
Because you've obviously got a family, everything else to deal with. It just shows you that we're not talking about having to go and do like 10 deals. It's it could just be as simple as one. So was that the trigger point that got you thinking, doing the numbers, going, well, if I put more time on this, then it just makes so much sense to do this full time?
Oh, definitely. And also the way it's, as I was saying before, it's the way that by doing that deal showed me that actually the children can come along to these appointments. They can come along to the viewings. They can meet builders with me. They had nicknames for the builders and things like that. So the money is going to be sustainable, but also the lifestyle is everything I would have ever wished for with the children, to be there for them. So at that point, it's just a no-brainer. That's what, and I have full faith that this will be my career going forward. This is exactly what I want to do. And it's also much more exciting than being a accountant as well, which helps. People that we speak to or deal with in property, apart from some grumpy builders sometimes, but it's like everyone's quite inspired and it's a nice atmosphere to be around. Whereas, in my profession, it's quite often you're sitting down at a meeting and people are already talking about how they don't want to be there before, you even start the conversation. And it's just like that shift. And I'm a people person. I love people. And this allows, fulfills me in that sense as well. So,
And how have you found the protege community?
Yeah, they've been brilliant. They've been so supportive is the main thing. I just think, it's a bunch of people who are all trying their best, really resilient, keep going, and also just want everyone to win. And I think that's what's so lovely is, and, people give you their time, and then in turn you want to give them your time back, just to help each other and get on.
It's very counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like this kind of sense of business where it's like you just work in isolation in a sense, and it's like this competitive type approach. But I think for me, it's I hope it's been by design and it's kind of worked out that way. It's like, well, if you create a supportive community where you can collaborate with one another and learn from each other, that's the whole idea of a community, isn't it? And for the best part, we've got such a great community. You're part of it as well. That are supportive, helpful one another. The amount of deals that's done together is just incredible as well.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn, because it can be, in the world of business, especially in the property, it can be a lonely journey if you're trying to figure all this out yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's really good to know that you've got a community there, you build your network, all that stuff really massively helps.
Yep, definitely.
So then after your first deal.
Yes. So then I got to hand in my notice, obviously. So this was just such a big deal for me. And then moved on to, we basically quickly acquired 2 more projects after that. And I think at that point I'd maybe, I don't know if I'd quite handed in my notice actually, because we'd got these 2 projects. And that at that point we'd noticed that this was becoming really hard actually, because we were trying to do our full-time jobs, do the business and have the kids as well. So we'd acquired these other 2 properties. In fact, one of them was probably what my best deal, because it was Home Report 145 and I got it for 70. And then that was
So
just amazing.
that's like over 50. It's
Yeah.
almost what, 55 or
Yeah.
close percent below market value.
Yeah.
So tell us about that one.
Well, that was just, so that came through a referral. So we paid £1,000 for that one actually, and it was actually on the market, but it was just a local estate agent, so I would never have came across it. So that's why we paid. Someone brought it to me, and I paid the referral because I thought I would never have found this just off my own back. So yeah, basically we just stuck. We worked out the numbers. We knew what we had to pay. And we basically just stuck to that, and we ended up getting that one. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was amazing. Like we just couldn't believe that this was possible.
And is that another flip?
That well, at the time it was going to be a buy to let actually, because it would have been an all money out deal. But now we've redone the numbers at this point where we are going to flip it on just to help with cash flow and things, because I think that's the thing with our situation with the kids. We're doing a lot and we're really busy, but we're mindful not to do too much either. That, and I think that's where we know what we're trying to achieve. So things like that now being a flip helps with cash flow. It helps, just maintain the lifestyle that we're trying to keep at the moment.
Yeah.
And then hopefully once the kids are older, we'll look to elevate at that point. But just now we're just trying to manage things basically.
Well, that's one of the things I always say to anyone who's building a portfolio. So if you love the job that you're in or the business that you have, then you're not trying to get away from it. So you can do both at the same time, and you can build a portfolio and you can allow the income from a portfolio to cover all your overheads and your expenses. Then you make that decision if that's the goal. And then if you don't like what you're doing, or you're destined for more, then the quickest way to do that is flips, of course, because in your case, one flip can cover someone's yearly salary.
Yes.
So it makes sense in your situation, and what you're saying there is that you can still build a portfolio, but if you just flip one a year, then that sustains that while you're building the portfolio too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think now the thing is, so now we went through a stage where we had acquired 2 properties, and to be completely honest, we were really at our limit, and so they didn't progress quickly enough. Now I've stopped my work, things are progressing as they should and everything's fine. But we're now in a position we can be doing more projects because I've got more time, more flexibility and things like that. But at the time, as I say, we were just mindful of we need to just do what we can at this point just to get to where we need to be, and then we can start to look to do more. So
it's interesting when you say to someone, what do you do for a living? "Oh, I'm a property investor," or in a lot of examples of people looking through the program, they quit the job and they become what's a full-time property investor.
Yeah.
But what does full-time property investor actually mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's not like your typical 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's kind of like, well, you've got your own hours, you can do things, and for you it's been great because you've got that time with the kids.
yeah. Oh, that to me is, if they're ill now, I can have them off nursery with me and look after them. They're still so young. I can be there for them. I'm there. I'm dropping them off every day, picking them up after school nursery every day. I've got more time with my 2-year-old. He might have to be in nursery a bit more if I'd stayed in the job that I was doing. That to me is invaluable. That is everything I could have wished for. And if I can just even get that for the next few years till they're at school, to me that has just been worth everything. Whatever happens after that's fine. If I can just get that is all I could have wished for. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that one there was going to be a buy and hold, but you've pivoted to a flip.
Yes.
Is that going on the market Now or
In springtime. So we've got another flip on the go as well. So two are due on the market in springtime. One's just went out, is getting rented next Friday actually. So that's our fourth project, and then now we're looking to acquire our next project. But what's quite nice is I feel so naturally now we're looking at more joint ventures, and things are sort of going down that path a little bit more. We've got again more time to start to look at that. So I'm looking at a joint venture with a couple of people who our values align, and it looks like, you know, splitting that work and working together. Just there's a new world at the moment that seems like it's opening up a little bit. I've got this new mindset and perspective again. It's just constantly shifting like throughout the journey. And now it's like, well, if I work with other people, actually that's going to move us forward even faster than what we're doing at the moment. So
absolutely.
so that's what we're looking at just now.
And I think that's what many people do when they've got more time.
Yes.
Even if you don't have time, it's something I recommend that you do.
Yes.
Even if it's in the evenings or the weekends or during lunch breaks or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you do have more time, the more people you can meet, because it's just having conversations. And then you said something so important there, which is your values aligned with a couple of people.
Yes.
Because everyone's values are different. There's good values that you would like to, try and collaborate with people that have that too. Because that way, then you know that the venture is going to go well.
Yeah.
And it means it's more than just one transaction. It could end up being 3, 5 or more.
Yeah.
And then when you've got, it's just like any relationship, isn't it? It takes time and energy to improve on it, to make it work. But if you're open to all of that, it allows you to do so much more.
Yeah. I always remember you saying that as well, you know, work with each other. That will push you forward so much more. And I think that's something Protégé helps with, is that mindset, which we have spoke about, is, you know, you're not in competition with these people. You can be working with these people, and, you know, it helps you move forward. And it's better to have a bit of something than, you know, all of nothing kind of thing. So in that sense, especially with us, with the kids and things, when we're doing joint ventures, it just makes so much sense to us to think, well, if somebody can pick that up whilst we're maybe tied up with the children, and then likewise I'm now out my job, so I can maybe pick other things up, that just seems to make so much sense as well. So having that on the go as well as what we've got going on as well, I think that will certainly start to like drive us forward now and push us forward as well. So
Yeah.
it's quite exciting.
Yeah, we just had the property jumpstart event at the weekend there. And it's interesting because many people come up to us, and you've went through a jumpstart yourself too.
Yeah.
And they're like, I've only got X amount of money.
Yeah.
Should I save for another couple more years?
Yeah.
And that's a common thing. And or people think that they think about their own resources.
Yeah.
Which is everyone's default, I suppose, because it's a
Yes,
bit alien
absolutely.
to think that someone would actually want to partner with me. But why
Yes.
would they?
Uh-huh.
And I think that I was very lucky because at a young age, I got started property, as you know, at the age of 19. So like 20, almost 21 years ago.
Which I just think is so brave. I would never at 19 have even thought about that.
We had so many young people at Jumpstart at the
it's
weekend there as well.
Yes, that must feel nice to know that
It
you're
does.
inspiring them to do that at that age.
Yeah, and I think it's because I've got older,
Yeah.
I wanted to shake a few of them.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at them and I'm going, I was your age, and for whatever reason, they've still got these concerns and limiting beliefs that I had. But the only way I was able to get through that was through sheer desperation, because we were already financially struggling, single parent household, see my mum struggling, and every argument was always about money. So some of the younger lads that were there never had the same financial problems.
Yeah.
You know, so but they've just accepted where they're at. They're getting looked after from parents, or they've got some money saved up, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But then you get that drive,
You have to
know.
have that, yeah. You've got to have that belief. And that's
Yeah.
one thing I will say is, even sitting here, I have absolute belief. We have went through such difficult times doing this journey, just naturally with our circumstances. And not one point did I ever think we're not going to make this. Like, I fully believe that we're going to do it. And we are doing it. But, you know, where we want to go as well now, I've got full belief that we're going to make this happen. And you have to have
Yeah.
that. That's the thing that drives you forward, isn't it?
I want to touch on it in a wee second, but with the younger folk, it's not just the younger ones, it's everyone as well,
Yeah.
is that we find ourselves in a place where complacency kicks in.
Yeah.
And that kicks in through a number of different things, associations, your environment, through what you've always done, playing it safe, maybe having taken what seemed like a risk before and it never worked out. And then, you've maybe got other people around you, other people's opinions, or you shouldn't really be doing that. And we need to break through all of that
Yeah.
in order to at least start to have some confidence and belief in ourselves. And if you don't, it's getting around that environment where people do have that confidence and
Exactly.
belief in
Yeah.
you. And it's kind of like borrowed belief.
Yeah.
And this is why I love what you're doing and what we have in the community is that collaboration, because you don't have to figure it all out. And for me, I had to joint venture with other people. And you said something there as well, which was interesting, is that you'd rather have, for me, I always say you'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. So I felt at the beginning, if I can just find some opportunities, surely there's going to be somebody that's got the money that wants to collaborate and partner. And it worked, because it got me to where I am today.
Yeah.
So it's collaborations, partnerships, joint ventures, pushing through. You mentioned there that over the last couple of years, by doing this, that you had some challenges. Was there one that you had to really try and overcome, or that felt like at the time, like, oh my God, this is quite big?
Yeah. We've had a few. I mean, that first project we dealt with so much on that first project. We had to redirect pipes. We had a BT pole in the back garden we had to bury. We went back to brick. It had rise and damp. We had a difficult neighbour. Then just before staging and home report, we had a leak in the kitchen.
Oh no.
So there was loads of things throughout that were really, really difficult. Especially the leak. I was actually unwell at the time. The kids had been unwell, and I remember I was due to go out to see the property. But I remember saying to my husband, look, I am just so tired here, really ill. And then we got this phone call about this leak. And then at that point, I was like, right, you have got to go. You don't have, there's not an option here. You have to go. Times like that have been really, really difficult. Also, I think just naturally juggling everything that we were, I actually became quite unwell at one point. And I think my body was just telling me, you're doing far too much. So that was a really tricky point as well. But I think it's just about changing things to make your life easier. So I always say as a mum, it's things like, when you've put on the dishwasher and you open it up when it's finished and it's not cleaned properly, you just put that dishwasher on again.
Yeah.
Don't start bringing out the dishes and just go, okay, put the dishwasher on it. Make your life easy where you can. Bring the kids with you where you can. Or, I think it's just the most difficult times have usually been just with juggling everything that we've needed to juggle. And stop watching Netflix. You don't have time to watch Netflix. Just little things like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it got to the point for a while where we weren't really socialising as much and seeing the family and friends as much, just whilst we were trying to do work and get to a point in the business where I could leave my job as well. But that's all came back now, that we got there. So we went through that really, really tricky time, but we had this goal and we had this vision.
Yeah.
And by just working through that, we managed to get there. So that's all came back. These things have came back. We can sometimes watch Netflix now, It was a tricky time to get the reward at the end, but it's been worth it by far.
So that's that whole idea of short-term sacrifice for long-term gain.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when we say short-term and long-term gain, it's still been a fraction of the time.
Absolutely.
It's not been that long.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you're saying, because you took on your first project, like a project that was like $100,000 refurb.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable there's going to be some challenges.
Yes.
And you mentioned before the podcast about a goal of yours to look at land as well.
Yes.
And oh my fucking God, right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. So I we build new homes, and there's not a week that goes by especially now when the weather's the way it is, and the temperature's been the temperature that has been, which means it's very difficult to lay brick, right? And that has knock-on effects and consequences and everything else as well. So it's so interesting, and it's two things: one, having resilience,
Yes.
right, to get through that stuff.
Yes.
And two is to realise that this is what we're asking for. I think, and it works well, is if you want personal growth, you need challenges, you need problems, you need obstacles. But it's not ones that take you out the game. It's the ones that help you grow and develop. It's ones that force you to then, strengthen your network, strengthen your power team, be able to get mentorship and coaching to help you through all these same challenges that you're going to face anyway. And it's by pushing through those, then you get the rewards. And I can guarantee now that when you look back and reflect, even at the moments where you were not feeling well and you get that phone call, I think that now that it's after the fact, you're probably like, yeah, I'd have taken that all day long if I knew that was going to end up here.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And actually, even throughout all that time, it was so, so hard. I always just had full belief that this was going to work out. Like, that's never changed. I've always had that belief. And you talk about land now. We are in conversations. We're sitting down with landowners now and talking about land development. I mean, I just sometimes can't believe that we're doing that at this point. But we're just like, why not? We know we've got the skills, so let's just try and make that happen. It's been a few conversations that then the numbers haven't worked out and we've had to walk away, unfortunately. But the fact we're even having these conversations, and there's one particularly we're still working on just now, we're hoping that is going to work out. And that is just, I mean, that's so exciting. I just can't even tell you how that would change our life, something like that. So...
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like when you think about all the strategies in the world of property, there's so many.
Yeah.
Land being one, new builds being one. In fact, land in itself, just acquiring a piece of land and taking it through planning can make you 6 figures.
Yeah.
And then building it out, if the numbers are right, can make you multiple 6 or even 7 figures as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's different. And you start where you start. And what's so interesting, I might as well say this because of a timing, is that I used to, and a lot of people know this, I used to work in construction.
Yeah.
So a wee trainee site manager
Yeah.
for Ludden.
Yeah.
And Ludden are going to be on our site in 2 weeks' time to start working on some of the civils work.
Are they? Yeah.
So it's just like it's so crazy, so 360 from working for that company to then contracting him as a developer.
Yeah,
and this is the exciting things that you've got when you're starting to look at all these opportunities. It's crazy.
Yeah, I bet. That is really, really cool, that, isn't it?
So tell me then, so that other deal that's now turning to a flip, those 2 flips,
yes.
So rough profit on those, because I know that it might sell over market value and so forth.
Yeah, now, let me think. So with Selkirk, so we bought it for 70, it was 145. We're expecting to spend about 60 on it. I think our profit on that, I'm getting all mixed up now with my different ones.
Yeah,
but it's certainly at least 30, 40.
So it's going to be very similar to the other one with the numbers.
Yeah. Which again is just, that is just life-changing for us as well. The fact that we can bring that money in whilst being flexible is just, it's amazing. Yeah.
And the next time we get you on, we'll be talking about the numbers on these ones and the land deals that you're working on, I'm sure.
I hope so.
So what is the bigger picture for you guys now? So you're started doing a number of transactions now, number of deals, doing flips. You're now more full time, which is really just living your own life under your own terms. What's the bigger picture?
So the bigger picture is, yes, land development, that's what we're looking to work on now. We have started negotiating some assisted sales as well, because that seems like a really good, we quite like a flip. That seems like a really good option as well. You're not having to tie up as much money and things like that. So we've already had a couple of discussions around about assisted sales, looking to joint venture a lot more. I think that's probably where we're heading in the future is probably those 4 things is what we're kind of focusing on at the moment. So
great. For anyone who is thinking about getting involved in property, maybe apprehensive or maybe not sure, what would you say and suggest based on your own experience?
I think that you need to just look at your own circumstances and you need to understand that you can make property work for you and your situation. And I think it's just so important not to compare yourself to other people, because for my situation with the children and things, we've done it at our own pace. We're really pleased with that, and we've made it work, and the profit we're making, it's completely working for us. If that had been a single person, more time, maybe didn't have a job, they would have done it differently maybe, or, it's understanding that take the step and then you can make it work for your situation, and just completely believe that, and then just do it. Just make the small, the small steps that just make it happen, basically.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jenna, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And I've got a funny feeling this is not going to be the last time for sure. You've got
Yeah.
so much on the go. It's exciting to see your journey.
Yeah.
What I love about it the most is that your fitness around family.
Yes.
You have
Yeah.
designed this for you, the family, what you are building together. And it's for me, that's exactly what I want to hear. People do it for their own reasons, which is awesome. But for you especially, focusing around the family and keeping them involved. And then, it's still very early doors in your journey, and it's been super exciting to see what you've achieved.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. And it's been lovely just to look back at the journey and see where we've came. And we can't wait to see where we're going to go, I suppose. Yeah.
Awesome. I love
Brilliant.
it. Good stuff.
Thank you so
Well, I'm
much.
sure you guys have been definitely inspired by that. I have myself. We'll link off to Jenna's links and all that stuff so you can reach out to her, connect with her. If you get any comments, pop them in the comments section below as well. I'm sure she'll have a little eye out for those too. But you should absolutely definitely connect with her. So until next time, all the best and bye for now.